We all have those everyday tasks we perform without much thought. Simple, familiar actions that seem so ordinary. We could do them with our eyes closed, but sometimes these routine moments can transform into critical situations that test our awareness, judgment, and ability to respond under pressure. Today, I want to share a story about how one person's typical workday became a powerful lesson in safety, attention to detail, and the importance of never taking the familiar for granted. This setting meet Sarah Chen, a maintenance technician who had worked at the Riverside manufacturing plant for 7 years. Every morning, she arrived Hachi, 6 a.m. to perform her rounds checking equipment, monitoring systems, and ensuring everything was running smoothly before the production shift began. This particular Tuesday in March seemed no different from any other. The sun was just rising, casting long shadows across the factory floor, and Sarah carried her tablet and toolbox, ready to complete her standard checklist. The routine was so ingrained that Sarah could practically navigate the facility blindfolded. She knew every machine, every gauge, every quirk of the aging building. This familiarity brought confidence, but as we'll discover, it also brought a subtle danger that many professionals face: complacency. The routine begins. Sarah started her rounds in the usual way, moving through the packaging area, then the assembly section, checking pressure gauges and temperature readings. Everything appeared normal. The equipment hummed along as expected. The readings fell within acceptable ranges, and her digital checklist filled with green check marks. As she approached the cooling system in the East Winger, massive unit responsible for regulating temperatures throughout the facility, Sarah noticed something unusual. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. A faint vibration that didn't quite match the normal operational rhythm. Most people would have missed it entirely, but Sarah's years of experience had trained her ears to detect even minor irregularities. She paused, placing her hand on the metal housing. The vibration was definitely there, slightly stronger than it should be. Her training told her to investigate further, but her schedule was tight, and she had 12 more checkpoints to complete before the shift change. This is where the story reaches its first critical junctional moment that happens to professionals everywhere, where efficiency competes with thoroughness. The decision point. Sarah faced a choice. She could note the irregularity in her report and continue her rounds, allowing the next shift to investigate. Or she could stop now and conduct a deeper inspection. The vibration didn't seem severe, and the temperature readings on her tablet showed everything within normal parameters. It would be easy to assume it was nothing, but Sarah remembered something her mentor had told her years ago. The biggest disasters often announced themselves with the smallest whispers. She decided to investigate. Opening the access panel, Sarah began a more detailed inspection. She checked the mounting bolts all secure. She examined the coolant lines, no visible leaks. She reviewed the pressure differential within acceptable limits. For 20 minutes, she searched for the source of that unusual vibration, and for 20 minutes, she found nothing obviously wrong. Just as she was about to close the panel and move on, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. One of the backup safety sensors, a small device tucked away in the corner of the unit, had a disconnected wire. This sensor wasn't part of the primary system, which explained why her tablet hadn't flagged any alerts. But this backup sensor served a crucial purpose. It was designed to detect a specific type of system failure that, while rare, could escalate rapidly if left unchecked. The critical discovery. Sarah immediately understood the implications. The vibration she had felt wasn't coming from a failing component. It was a symptom of a broader issue that the primary monitoring system simply wasn't detecting. Without that backup sensor connected, the system was essentially operating blind to a potentially dangerous condition developing within the cooling unit. She quickly documented the finding with photos and detailed notes, then contacted her supervisor, despite the early hour. Within minutes, the plant manager was on site, and within an hour, a full engineering team had assembled. What they discovered was sobering. A slow degradation in one of the coolant pumps that, if left unchecked for another day or two, could have resulted in a complete system failure during peak production hours. The consequences of such a failure would have been significant not in terms of immediate danger to people, but in terms of operational disruption, potential equipment damage, and financial impact. The plant would have needed to execute an emergency shutdown, affecting hundreds of workers and delaying critical orders from multiple clients. The repair costs alone would have been substantial, not to mention the reputational impact on the company. The lessons learned. Sarah's story offers several important lessons that extend far beyond manufacturing environments. First, it highlights the danger of complacency in routine tasks. When we perform the same actions repeatedly, our brains naturally shift into autopilot mode. This efficiency is useful, but it can cause us to miss important details. The key is maintaining what safety professionals call situational awareness, staying mentally engaged even during familiar activities. Second, the story demonstrates the value of trusting your instincts. Sarah could have easily dismissed that slight vibration as normal variation or attributed it to her imagination. Instead, she honored that small voice that said something wasn't quite right. In professional settings, we often feel pressure to move quickly and stick to schedules, but taking time to investigate anomalies is rarely wasted time. Third, this incident underscores the importance of backup systems and why they require regular verification. The disconnected sensor had likely been that way for weeks or months, invisible to casual inspection. Regular, thorough checks of safety systems, even those rarely used, are essential to maintaining true operational safety. The plant management took Sarah's discovery seriously, implementing several changes. They revised their inspection protocols to include specific checks of backup safety systems. They introduced random spot audits to ensure technicians weren't rushing through inspections. Most importantly, they created a culture that celebrated the decision to pause and investigate rather than check boxes and move on. Broader applications. While Sarah's story takes place in an industrial setting, the principles apply across countless situations. Consider the pilot who takes extra time to review a pre-flight checklist despite having performed it thousands of times. Think about the nurse who double-checks a medication despite being certain of the dosage. Reflect on the driver who decides to pull over when their vehicle makes an unfamiliar sound, even though they're running late. In each case, someone chose thoroughness over efficiency, investigation over assumption. These decisions rarely make headlines precisely because they prevent problems rather than respond to them. But they represent some of the most important actions we can take in our professional and personal lives. Sarah's routine task turned critical, not because of a dramatic emergency, but because she recognized that even small details matter. Her willingness to pause, investigate, and follow through on a subtle observation prevented what could have been a significant operational crisis. Her story reminds us that professional excellence isn't about flashy heroics. It's about maintaining vigilance, trusting your training, and never assuming that familiar equals safe. The next time you perform a routine task, remember Sarah at that cooling system, her hand on the vibrating panel, facing the choice between moving on or digging deeper. Choose to dig deeper. Your attention to detail might prevent a crisis that never has to happen.